Welcome to Rise. I hope everybody can hear me. So assuming you can, if you cannot, can you please just, put in the chat or something, I can't hear you. And if you can, I'm just going to assume everything is okay. And this is basically a series that I started to work with this year in terms of breaking it down to each particular key element, and started offering one class a month, and it will go through the end of the year. But basically it was, I think it was like 2017 that I gave a talk, and it was basically laying out these 12 key elements. And so I decided to go ahead and turn it into a course, or a loosely offered course. In essence, you can take what you'd like, leave the rest. I'm always open to people's own flexible beliefs and intentions and desires. And so no attachments from me. These are just offerings. And so in this Rise element, 12 key elements to align with your soul purpose. The idea is to really open up what might be going on in you, and what is opening up for you to really connect in with your soul. Now, everybody is on their own spiritual journey, each at different phases. Perhaps some people are in a phase of really coming inward, and others are like, okay, I'm ready to step out. And there's all kinds of things in between, of course. So in this way, we will be exploring each key element that are sort of the, I would say, touch points along the way to really aligning with who you've come here to be. So I'm offering these free classes, and again, exploring one key element a month, and each can stand alone. But I'm also, as you can see, recording them so that you can always go back and watch any of the other ones you might have missed, or if you want to review. And so each element and each class, I will be covering insights about your inherent gifts and your purpose, guidelines for coming back into alignment, and tools so that you can implement them during your spiritual unfoldment. And of course, this is being recorded so that you can watch it again. So if you did miss it, you would simply go to my website, veronicalee.tv, under the heading Learn, and find classes and talks, and you will find this particular class. Or it's the 12 key elements series. This is live right now. So if you want to unmute yourself, you can do so. If you're calling in, if you're on Zoom, everybody knows how to use Zoom now. I've been using it for like 10 years. And so when I used to do sessions with people on Zoom, there was always that learning curve, but now we're all experts. But if you're calling in and you're not on a desktop of some kind, then you can unmute yourself by pressing *6 if you have any questions, or if you want to raise your hand to get my attention, you could push *9. And again, I'll be putting resources in the chat. So I'll just share a little bit about myself. So I am Veronica Lee. My metaphysical upbringing was really my foundation. It brought me into this understanding of the world that I found to be very different than all my friends around me, right? It's like it was the early mid 70s, and I was not like the other kids, not just because, we always feel awkward and different, but it was mostly because of my upbringing. I didn't see things the way that other children saw them just because of how I was raised. Basically, I did want to be so-called normal. So after high school, it was sort of like, okay, I'm going off to college, and it was a very intellectual college town. And so it was like, okay, can I just do like motherhood and be normal for a while? And as I have jokingly said, that obviously didn't work. And so I ended up really coming back into doing this work, even though this was not my intention. Originally, I was thinking I'll be a mom and an interior designer. And then through crisis, sort of landed back at this home base of metaphysics. Of course, I was also taught as a child that we are all intuitive and we are all, it's just a matter of practicing. And so I am a natural intuitive, just like you. And I was born highly awake, just came in with a lot of information, kind of been there, done that for many of lifetimes, for better or for worse, let's say. And I'm a spiritual teacher and intuitive, and I've been mentoring people and working professionally for over 15 years. I am also an inspirational speaker and writer. And as you can see, I have been writing for Om Times for over 10 years or about 10 years, and have, hundreds of articles that you can always access through my website. I consider myself a transformational visionary, and my intention is to empower others to really help you align with your truth, your power, and your joy. I don't really hook into any particular dogma, so that can either be something you resonate with or not. So you, again, can take what you like and leave the rest. I am a mother of 4 young adults, and I did lose my husband of 30 plus years in 2018. And so took a few years of my, this kind of work off as I took care of him. And of course, when I was ready to emerge, the pandemic happened. So little by little, I've been coming back out of my cocoon, as are you, I am sure. All right. So RISE really became an acronym because so many of us are actually, moving into this place of awakening, right? We're going through this mass awakening, and it's sometimes with intention, other times it's with resistance. And so it can be a little bit tricky to discover, our place in the world when we're like in panic mode. And yet it often will be that kind of kick in the butt to make us step into who we are. And what I did with this acronym RISE is I created I use the acronym to kind of delineate these 12 key elements. And as you will see, there are 3 R's, 3 I's, 3 S's, and 3 E's. So it's more like rise, right? So this transformation that you are going through, that each of us go through, is really not an overnight, nor is it literally a 12-step, here's how you do it. And it's all, buttons and bows all perfectly, tied up, but it's a process. And so this is just showing you the steps and the intentions of what the soul is wanting from you from this place. So I'll go through each of these right now in terms of just your basic, overview. Not going to go into in depth of any of them except the 4th one, which is today's focus, which is instigating change. But to review or to look ahead, there are 12 steps, 12 key elements, not steps, 12 key elements that really help you align with your soul purpose. And the first is to recognize your true self. And who is that? What is that? Is it your identity, or is it that you are this human spiritual being here with some kind of bigger purpose? 2 is to remember your purpose. Now, there are lots of ways we can do that. And so again, the first 3 sessions have been recorded. If you missed them, you can go back and find them on my website. Renew your commitment, just like, okay, now I know, my essence, who I am, I'm getting connected to my purpose. And now it's up to me consciously to renew that commitment to doing the footwork to align with that. And today we're going to be speaking about instigating change. Next month, illuminate your intentions, implement your intuition, separate from unsupportive patterns, seek support and surround self, show up and step out, embody and empower, evolve consciousness, and then the final one, enjoy life and being you. Okay, so now we're going to get into the actual elements and go deeper into the elements. And again, this doesn't have to be a hard line. These are how you have to do it. This is all information that basically I not only am I a lifelong metaphysician, but because I've been working in the Akashic records for so long and connecting into these higher realms for so long, it's like, it's really sort of second nature for me to just tune in and get information and to feel into it and to kind of see how patterns work. And also, again, I've been working with clients for, over 15 years, and these are the patterns I see happening again and again. And so anything I bring isn't really new. It's like whether you've, read self-help books or whether you've been on your own spiritual path of some kind, you'll often find these are fundamental truths that show up regardless of that path. So to instigate change, I'll read through them and then I'm going to go back and really go deep. So before I get started, I just want to make sure and ask if anybody has any questions about anything I've said so far. I know I've only just skimmed the surface, only done an overview, but I don't want to lose anybody and go too deep if there are any particular questions that have come up for anyone. So again, you can push *6 if you're on the phone, or *9 to either unmute yourself or raise your hand, or for all you familiar with Zoom and on a desktop, you can just literally use the little, raise hand, or you can unmute yourself. Okay. So let's go ahead and dig in. I'm going to read them once and then we'll go back and go through each one. To instigate change, you want to open your heart to accepting changes. You want to recognize your body, mind, and soul needs. Ideally, you're going to focus on one or two things that you love. A tricky one can be to be bold, and yet, that makes it easier, allow for baby steps. And then finally, let go of knowing all the answers. And that, I think, is probably the trickiest of the group of what I'm offering today. Trust me, there are plenty of tricky little things that we go through during this journey of awakening. So let's go back to open your heart to accepting changes. One of the things that I remember, he's a minister or what's church? He was a minister at a church, and it's a spiritual living church. And he was telling a story about a man who was in the congregation who wanted a healing. And the man came to him, and this person, the minister asked, are you ready to be healed? Or do you want to be healed, or something like that? He asked directly, are you ready and willing to be healed? And the man's response was, well, I wouldn't have made the appointment if I weren't. And he's like, okay, but are you ready for this change? Are you ready to be healed? And the man was like, well, and he started saying all these other things, like, I made the appointment, I wouldn't have been here if I wasn't, all these other things, but could never directly answer that question with yes. So one thing that we may often recognize subtly or not so subtly is how comfortable we get with things being the same, even if they're uncomfortable, right? And so recently I was listening to a webinar, and there was this like idea of, oh, this can happen and this can happen and this can happen, that showed me all these possibilities of things that can move me in a direction of, let's say, positivity and, abundance and blah, blah, blah. And then I kept, feeling into my own limitation or my own fear of, but what if? But what if I wouldn't be able to handle X, Y, or Z, right? Or what if, right? So we can really get usually unconsciously caught in the sameness or the fear of any kind of changes. So when I say open your heart to accepting changes, this isn't just like, oh, I'm accepting the change because I've made an appointment with somebody and I'm saying yes to that. It's a process, right? It takes practice. It's discovering within you any resistances that are holding on to familiar, that are holding on to the now that is comfortable and that wants you to be safe, right? It's our ego's job to keep us safe. And it's often our ego that will start to have all these objections to changes in any way that might stir it up for our safety or what we believe is our safety. One thing you can do, again, I want to, kind of tap into these tools and offer some suggestions and guidelines, is you can find or create an affirmation that you begin your day with. For example, it's, you can, before you even open your eyes and you're just kind of waking up because it's early in the morning or just before going to bed, those places where you're in between, that you're not fully conscious and awake, but you're just coming to, or just, wandering off, that you become very open and susceptible. And so at that point, before the rush, you can literally just begin your day with some kind of heartfelt intention or prayer of, I open my heart to receive this day. I open my heart to all that is present and ever changing, right? I open to the change that I am, that I inherently am. Because if you think about it, you are ever changing. As much as we might want to hold on to something, we can literally look at an old photo and go, wow, how much have I changed, right? We can see the physical changes. And we often, even that can scare us, right? We can go, oh my gosh, I can't believe these lines that are happening. But literally, it's like it's like our heartbeat. It's like our breath. It's so natural, this place of change. So how can you start to create this, relationship and this like dance with change itself? All right, let me feel anything else wants to be said. Okay, what I want to speak to here is just showing me my third chakra, our will center. And oftentimes, I'm talking about, opening our heart, but I also want to kind of have you feel into that third chakra, the solar plexus, the upper belly, and just feel for a moment about this sense of, what does change mean for me? And if you just take a moment and breathe into that, what does change mean for me? You can start to, let's say, feel where it might be sticky, or you can feel the excitement, right? You can feel a little bit of bubbliness, right? And then the mind might grasp a story and then hone in on, oh no, I can't do that. Or, oh my gosh, that would be so awesome. But if you just allow yourself to drop in and feel into that belly aspect of this change. I'm sorry, my phone keeps dinging. I have it set so if my children ever need me, they can literally, what is it called? Make noise on my phone at any time. Just turn it off. All right. One of the things, as I've been working with people that I have, I was seeing for a long time, is that we were really awakening, from these higher chakras, really coming into our being, bringing our spiritual selves, really anchoring them in. And for a long time, I was seeing a lot of energy around the throat and around the heart. It's like, this is the area that was expanding, right? Really stepping into our truth, coming into this multidimensional heart, let's say. But now the energy that's really coming up for people is that third chakra, is this area of change. And of course, what happened in 2020, I mean, change was like, here we go. We're changing, and we're changing things right now and really quickly. And we adapted, and it wasn't pretty and it wasn't fun. But once we adapted, it was like, maybe this is doable. And now we're easing back into, what we would call, let's say, normalcy, but what is normal, and what did we hold on to that felt much more in alignment, right? So oftentimes those changes that we initially feel like resisting or that are forced upon us can offer us so many things that are beyond what we might have originally done for ourselves. All right, I'll pause here. Any questions about this? Open your heart, accepting change. If there's any, you can put them in the chat if you want, or you can simply raise your hand and I can. And if you do think of any questions as I go and you don't want to interrupt or say anything, by all means, you can put the questions in the chat as well. Okay. Recognize body, mind, and soul. And I would even, when I say soul, I mean our spiritual selves as well as this emotional component. So I do often like to make sure we talk about physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, because each of them has a place. They're all parts of our bodies. They're all parts of our being, and require us to honor our processes and our needs. When I look at this particular piece, one of the things that that's easy for any of us to see, how we often get kind of fixated on the mind and the body's doing, not the body, not what the body needs, but the body as an instrument to do, right? We think and then we do. We have all these thoughts and these beliefs and these opinions and these judgments and these really, I would say kind of received, from our collective, from ourselves, from our personalities, but often from our parents, a way of thinking, right? Our thoughts are often formed by what's out there. And then we expect and demand that our body just carry it out, right? That we make this happen. So when we look at it from a broader, more compassionate place, what does your body need, right? Does it need to have food on the go that we are rushing from here to there and drive through? Now they have Amy, so we can get, literally I can get kombucha and vegetarian food on my way to wherever I'm rushing to. I don't have to settle for, let's say, the crappier fast food. But is that what my body needs, right? And how much sleep do I need? For me, it's always been minimum 8 hours. But I'll get into loops still where I'll be like, oh no, nobody can tell me to go to sleep. I'm an adult now, right? My youngest of my 4 just moved out a couple of months ago. And once they moved out, it was sort of like, I don't have to go to bed. It was kind of funny. It's like, and I'm still kind of in that mode, which is like, nobody can tell me what my bedtime is. I don't have to do anything now. And so I'm pushing this limit. And then, in this little cycle of waking up tired, going, oh my gosh, I keep neglecting this fundamental need, right? And so by recognizing it, it can become this place of, oh, okay, here's what's really going on, right? I'm probably avoiding the loneliness of not having, the children in the house, right? And how I avoid that loneliness might be watching Netflix, one more show, right? And so then I can feel into this emotional need that the body was responding to, right? So it's a matter of being somewhat, self-aware. So when I do talk about the emotional needs, oftentimes that's the one, and I started to type it in today when I was creating this slide, and I thought, no, just keep it at body, mind, and soul, because I feel like soul is the emotional too. I really feel like there's this piece that soul encompasses the spirit and this emotional, but let me just focus on emotions for a minute. In this emotional piece, we are often taught as a very young child, you don't feel that, or that's not what's going on, or, stop crying, right? And especially anything negative. But if you think about even our happy emotions, oftentimes it's too loud, right? Settle down, right? So we start to like not even know what to do with this emotional piece of ourselves, right? There's nobody to say, I see you, I witness you, I totally understand why you're feeling this way, and I recognize what you're feeling, and that feeling is valid. And the other thing is that when we come in, because any of you here in this call are highly awake, right? When you come in, you wouldn't have been attracted to my class. When you come in as awake as you are, you naturally, so I'll go talk about this, our inherent gifts, we naturally come in as empaths, right? It's not just the survival, like, yes, when we're hyper vigilant and, worried about, who's pissed off and what's, shoe's going to drop next, that is the survival, but we are natural empaths that really can sort of have this beautiful relationship with our environment, right? And feel and experience, the sunshine, mom's emotions of love as she's nursing us, right? We can feel these emotions. And so what happens is, ours are getting shut down, but in the meantime, we're still aware of all of these emotions of, mom and dad and whoever's in our small little circle, our teacher who's got the frown on their face, and we can tell that she's not in a good mood. And then we start to get them confused as to what's our emotion and what's theirs. And what are we supposed to do with it all, right? One pattern I see that's super common for many of us and for empaths is that, as children, we experience and feel and know the wounds of our parents. That's just natural. It's inherent. And we can see that they are wounded in some way. And what we want is to absorb and take their wounds in and fix them inwardly. And like, okay, once I'll take care of mommy's depression, I can give it back to her all healed, right? And of course, that doesn't actually happen. It's a wonderful intention and coming from this very pure place, but it's not, really how it works. And so we kind of get caught in that cycle of trying to take on other people's stuff so that we can kind of fix it inwardly. But at the same time that we're doing that, ours get pushed back to the, back burner of our own emotions, and we get a little confused. So starting to have these awarenesses of what is my emotion and what are my emotional needs becomes important in terms of making changes, because if our emotions aren't part of this factor of the whole, then what happens is we loop back into habits that are just keeping us comfortably uncomfortable, right? All right. And then mind, what is our mental need? If we were thinking about it from just purely our mental capacities and faculties, honestly, I don't know if we're not ever, feeding that, right? I mean, we might be feeding it junk, just like our body. We might be feeding junk food. We might be reading articles that take us down wormholes that we don't need to be going down, or, filling up with thoughts that are not so clean, but we're constantly thinking. So if I were to say that there was something that was needed for the mental body, it would be to sort of learn this practice of perhaps quieting the mind, right? To noticing the chatter, to recognize what's your thought and where's your thought spinning to, and just bringing it back without a judgment, without, shame, but to go, look at this. I just kind of went off on this little track of mine. So recognizing that my mind likes to be challenged. It likes to be organized. It likes, to have a plan, and recognizing that and honoring it, but at the same time going, and it likes to spin off in its own little stories, right? And what don't we need to feed? Just like our children, it's like, yeah, our children love to have the sugar, but is that what's best for them? And so just sort of witnessing and recognizing what is the most ideal. And again, these are strivings. These are not have tos, it's not like we're these projects that have to make something of ourselves, right? And then in terms of the soul needs, and I think the biggest soul need is to be expressed through your vehicle. And when I say that, I think you can feel that right in that gut, right in that third chakra. And it probably even brings a little bit of like this emotion up, right? It's like, yeah, that's why I'm here. That's what I'm wanting. I'm wanting to live in alignment with what my soul is needing from me and wanting from me. And then the question becomes, well, how do I do that? How, right? And the first thing is to, kind of quiet that mind, start to recognize who you are on a soul level, start to feel into that place of purposefulness, not purpose as in out there, I'm here to, feed the hungry, but I'm here to be me. I'm here to live in alignment with joy, with my vibration, my natural vibration of joy, and to not feel like I have to make excuses for that or, tamp it down in any way, right? And for tools, it's like, what environments kind of hold space for that? What environments hold space for that? Yeah. So Linda, thank you for the comment. And yes, this is a process. And I like to think of the ego as not like this thing to get rid of, but simply a navigator who's sort of like taken over. And we kind of like, it's like if you think about the GPS, when you know where you're going, but you put on GPS just because it makes it easier and you don't have to think. And then you look at it and you're like, wait a minute, they're taking me a totally ridiculous way. This is not the way I'm going to go. Right. So the GPS is the ego, right? That just goes, here's the way to get there. And they're not noticing, like right now it says my road is closed. And it's been saying this for a long time. And so it always wants me to go some ridiculous way to get home. And it's like, no, the road's not closed. I know that, right? I'm going to go the way I always go. All right. Any questions about the second part, the recognized body, mind, soul? Any particular comments? Again, you can put them in the chat. All right. So focus on 1 to 2 things you love. Now, this part is a little bit sad in that sometimes, I'm only saying it from a place of kind of jokingly sad, we can start to get, what's the word? Let me feel this, hold on. We could start to get like overly focused on what is it that I love? And then where I say it's sad, it's like often we're so connected to production and doing and shoulding on ourselves that we don't even know what we love. We don't even know what we love. So rather than fast forwarding into a project or something some kind of do energy of love, I'm inviting you to say, what is it that I love that I can bring my awareness to, right? And maybe it's a certain, young living oil that you put in your diffuser. And when you smell it in your home, you're like, I just love this. I just love how this feels, right? Or maybe it's right now, it's March, and March, I love the green. I love the green. Right. And so, yes, I'm seeing the weeds get, I live on a couple acres and the grass starts to just get really big and green and thick. And I know somebody has to, weed eat it. It's not going to be me. And it's like, but I love it. I love that green. And then there are the little poppies that come up and they're just like, oh my gosh, look at that orange, amongst the green. Right. And of course, I could focus on the fact that my yard's a mess in so many ways because, there's a fence coming down around my garden and my landlord just cut down a bunch of trees because of fire. I'm in the woods. And so we have to worry about fire. So there's a bunch of just, trees that are just saying, help me, cut me down. I'm going to be a fire hazard. And, I could look at all that, or I can say, look at the green, look at the poppies, smell that, oil, right? Taste that little corner. You just need a little nib of dark chocolate, whatever that is, right? And maybe the focus is a little bit more of a to-do in some way, right? Maybe there's a little bit more of that. So it might be, I love when my pets are on my lap at night. My dog tends to be more affectionate in the morning. So for her, she'll put her head and she just wants to be loved, right? She sleeps in my bed and then in the morning, she's just so much more affectionate. And it's the opposite at night. She's like, leave me alone. And then it's the cat's turn at night. And she just does the whole purring thing. And I just love that, right? That whatever that is, that's a little bit more doing. And if something is really kind of coming up that's like, I really love taking hikes. So how can you create that space and that step toward taking hikes, right? So one or two things that you can focus on and invite in to notice and to love. So Leslie, I do want to acknowledge, yes, so much is going on in our solar plexus. So much is going on in this will center. And I want to talk about that for just a moment. What's happening is we are awakening and we're coming down into this area. This idea of purpose really has a lot to do in the mind's eye with who we are, right? On a soul level, our purpose is who we are. It's being ourselves. It's aligning with this resonance of joy, this high frequency of joy. It's that act of just allowing and being that itness that we are, right? But the construct comes down and says, here's me and here's my purpose. And they both have to prove their worthiness. They both have to measure up to something. And you can breathe into that and feel the tightness. It's like, holy moly, that is like, right? Because now we've placed a judgment on that. And then there's a right and a wrong to that. And there's a should or a shouldn't. And the reality is they're one and the same. We are already in it. We are already it. And it's the allowing of that, which of course is, again, easier said than done oftentimes, right? Any questions about the things you love before I go on? Anything coming up for anybody? Okay. So I'm going to go to the be bold, yet allow for baby steps. There's a meme going around of all my social medias. There are ones that I just really ignore. And I just like, okay, yeah, my Facebook will feed into my Twitter. It'll feed into my, whatever. And so I don't have to even pay attention, but I'm mostly on Facebook. And there's a meme that has a picture. It's like a cartoon drawing. And there's a picture of a ladder on the left with a whole bunch of little steps that are really rungs that are really close together. And the person's reaching up and like grabbing them. And then the picture on the right is a ladder, and they're equal length ladders, but the rungs are really far apart. And the person underneath it is just looking at it like, I can't do this, right? And it says the importance of baby steps, right? Or something along those lines. So baby steps, there are people who can skip and who can jump ahead and who can, whatever, right? Go for it. And I'm not saying they're any better or worse. It's just that for the most part, many of them, especially when we're talking about these bigger changes that we really want to bring into our lives, like being who we're here to be, that's a huge change, right? They often require baby steps so that we don't freak out and say, I can't do this, right? And so one of my own personal experiences that I've just been kind of looking at this I've looked at it for a while, but it's really come up this week, is that I've never considered myself to be disciplined. I was raised, my mom, she was, hippy dippy and, metaphysician. And so much so that, I was taught as a child, we create our own reality. You're your own God. I'm my own God. And I'm thinking, I'm God. And then I'm thinking, okay, so how did I screw everything up so young? Like, oh, and it just kind of freaked me out a bit. And she also really, really wanted to raise her family, me, her only child, differently than what she experienced, which was, discipline in a negative way, right? Abuse, you might say, right? And so it was also during the time, the inspiration of Martin Luther King. And so she wanted to raise me with nonviolence. And so she raised me based on her inspiration was a man named Rudolph Dreikurs, who wrote a book called Children the Challenge. And it was all about consequences and conversations. So from the time I was little, it was like consequences and conversations and natural consequences. And, why do you think that happened? It's like, oh, good God, just spank me. No, I'm just kidding. But so anyway, so one of the things that she allowed for is for me not to do my homework, for example, because she figured that I would have the natural consequences of the bad grade. What she didn't recognize, didn't quite work, is I didn't care about the bad grade. There were no consequences. The teacher could get mad at me, be like, oh, whatever. And I could just do enough that would keep me afloat and just didn't care. And then the natural consequence of let's say, staying up too late, because she didn't have a bedtime for me, would be I'd be tired. So I was tired, and so it's just kind of funny, but she herself was not disciplined. But if you think about it from a different perspective, considering she broke through so many family dynamics and traumas, she was extremely disciplined, right? So when my husband and I had children, that was something that I struggled with greatly, is this discipline. Like, how do I instigate any kind of rhythm in my children's lives, and I couldn't even like, how do you change a diaper? Well, they poop or they pee. Okay. That's a clue. Right. But in terms of, it's like, it had to be based on need. It wasn't based on just rhythm. And so I'd wait till something got into its, high need, and then I'd do it. Right. Whereas my husband was like, we need to brush the children's teeth, or we need to comb the children's hair, or, they need to have a bedtime. And I'm like, really? But he was raised with like June Cleaver, right? He had everything just like this rhythm and this predictability and this normalcy in so many ways. So he provided that. And I've had to learn that. And so when I look at the things that I've struggled with in this place of discipline, I'm now going, okay, I've been consistently for a year now doing a weekly transformational forecast on YouTube. And I do it every Monday. And today's the day, and I haven't done it yet, but I've been consistently doing it every Monday for over a year. That's huge for me, right? And so it's like, wow, okay, I'm doing these little tiny things that don't have to be a lot of effort, that don't have to be anything life-changing, right? And so it's these little tiny steps. I wanted to, start to move my body. And so thankfully, during the pandemic, my yoga teacher decided to go online. And so it's on my calendar twice a week, but I usually only make it once a week, right? And it's like, okay, but at least I'm doing it once a week, right? So it's, again, these places. Now, when you're looking to change something pretty significant, you're, again, evaluating all these things, creating the baby step that is doable. And if you need support, will help you start to feel those successes, right? That you're not just this failure or whatever the story is after all. And for me, the story that I grew up with, because I didn't apply myself, the teachers would always tell my mother, probably in front of me, how it was, back then, was she's so bright, but she just doesn't apply herself. She's so bright, but she's lazy. So I just totally grew up with this, I'm lazy, right? And so I've really had to look at the ways that I'm not really lazy. I just have had to struggle a bit to learn this forming of discipline, and in ways that work for me, right? So those baby steps can be baby steps. It could be a thought pattern. It could be, whatever that is. It can be something that, again, if you bring it and tie it into something you love, it'll make it so much easier. And what I want to say about the being bold is that coming into who you are is bold. That is bold, right? That takes the courage. And you're doing that already. So any questions or anything coming up for this one? All right, so let's go to the last one. Now this is the trickiest one. Did I bring I could read it to you. I could read it to you, my poem I wrote for today, because it's kind of what's the word? It's a fight against this last one, right? Let going of knowing all the answers. Let go of knowing all the answers. So here I am. This is my work. My work as an intuitive, as doing readings for people in the Akashic records, is I answer your questions. That's all I do, right? And so I do, when I do my mentoring, I don't answer. It's not like purely questions, just shot at me. But this is what I do. I tap into these higher realms. You ask me a question, it's like, oh, here's the information. And I just give it to you. And so it's like, I'm so used to having answers. That is what I do. And yet we're moving into this place of openness collectively, right? And it's going to show up in our lives individually of needing to let go of the answers, of making room for the mystery, making room for the not knowing, right? So just as I'm like, oh yes, instigate change, come and know who you are, blah, blah, blah. And in the meantime, let go of having all the answers, right? So it's sort of, one of the things I probably have said this in one of these other 3 that I've done already, is that, the saying I love is the divine is found in paradox, right? It's the and both. And so as we are in this place of exploration, discovery, openness, we make room for possibility and for things that we don't know. And in that way, it's almost as if, we have an intention for the garden, right? It's like, yes, I want to have certain fruits and certain vegetables and, whatever that is. But there's also this place of really, we're feeding, we think we planted certain things and we're following the directions and we're cultivating and we're feeding and nourishing and watering and doing all the right things, but we really don't know what's going to happen. We can generally predict, but we always make room for things to not turn out, right? It's like, sometimes I'll say, you plant more because you know that certain things won't turn out. But then there's always that sweetness of when something pops up that you had no expectation for, right? It's like, oh, here's this random flower I had no idea was in the ground and it showed up. And there's the sweetness and surprise of that. But this is energetically where we are moving toward. And even though there's this idea of holding space for changes and for, setting intention, and we're going to talk about intention next month, it's like you want to align with the sweetness of who you are and this purpose of being in joy, of the vibration of joy, and being aligned with your choices that you make. So you're not judging self. And at the same time, kind of opening your arms to the possibilities of maybe Source, God, the mystery, knows more than you. And maybe Source, God, the mystery, doesn't want to tell you because they know you're going to resist. And so why not just be in that place of openness? That's, again, probably the most etheric of all of these, but also the hardest, and also in some ways sort of the juiciness of that, the potential. But it's like, here's where everything can start to happen, right? This magical piece. So we're down to about the last few minutes, and I will go ahead. I do this meditation journal on Monday mornings when I can. And so we meditate for like half an hour and then we just write whatever comes to you. So I'll share this. It's just all in chicken scratch. So really kind of hard for me to read, but it reminded me of this last one, the letting go of all the answers. And I'm going to swear, so don't be too offended here. But I titled this Striving for Emptiness or Answers. Either shut the fuck up or give me answers. No wondering, no curiosity, no field of possibilities. Answers. Straightforward. This is it. Right here, my dear. This is your directive. Oh, and I want to feel the yes of it all. The confidence, the joy, the clarity. I'll even take the doldrum of linearness, shut down my periphery. My eyes need to look at the whole, searching for greener grasses. Is that even possible? I promise with idealism in some kind of willing compliance, but doubt knows me too well. Is that it? Is it my will that fights the narrowness of here to there? Or is it my mind that thinks she knows better? My circumstances, wrought with mind criticisms, proves she knows no better. Either that, or there's a crippled shadow of incapability haunting all effort. All, yes, those pessimistic extremes, the belief in absolutes, which usually sink to the depths of nothingness, but not the juicy nothingness, the one that floats me into bliss. It's the look at all my failures nothingness, the belief that hooks into failure with frightened teeth. Good God, just look at all my children. There is nothing failure about them. But is motherhood the capstone of validity? And why am I relying on their beings to accept proof of my worth in any way? Motherhood has not ended, but the active role of feeding and tending and navigating those I birthed has transformed into a bittersweet surrender. 28 years of my fundamental heart's desire has completed its course. And that last leg was done alone in widowhood. So now the empty pages demand that I fill them. My soul meets each new line with pleading. Reveal to me, show me my next. A half hour of earnest meditation, of emptying and re-emptying my mind offers me pause, slows down the grasping. But the seeking has become dissatisfyingly addictive, like turning on the TV and hoping to find my life's answers on the screen. But filling the emptiness with other people's lives and projections and pretendedness only hammers at the emptiness, creating sharp echoes that laugh at my longing. So I canceled my TV, but only in vain. My finger now clicks and scrolls through Netflix and Hulu, searching, reminding me I have Amazon too. No shows or movies fill that void. No ahas reach out and slap me. And I've yet to find the book, real or on audio, that delineates my next packaged purpose. I can't add it to the cart to be delivered to my doorstep. This next phase seems to be more like an invitation, but there is nothing written on the card, no what, where, when, or even why, and no fucking how. I scream for the what, day after day after day, begging life to fill the void. Turning the blank invitation over and around, I study the edges, but they are so thin and useless. A potential paper cut, really. More stark than the what, where, when, why, or how is the who. And she begs for blissful emptiness or answers to redefine her. Anyway, so I wanted to make sure you didn't have any questions. If you have questions, that would be great. and I can answer whatever it is that is coming up for you.